Mhm. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana-shalakaya Chakshur-militanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Dandavat pranams to all the assembled Vaishnavas. So we have our Thursday Q&A, and I do have some questions from the last couple of weeks. I'll look first at this one. I think this one was from Tungarasa. Very nice question. About conscience. Does conscience exist on the mortal plane or somewhere higher up? Where does it come from? The mind, the intellect, or another source? Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Um, and I mean, one point about these types of questions is that, it's also sometimes just to do with how you're defining terms, right? What are you defining conscience as, right? Um, but if we define conscience as that aspect within ourselves that has a sense of what's right and what's wrong, right? What's good, what's bad, um, and then coming to a higher level, right? Seeking spiritual truth. If we're defining it like that, then I would say that that conscience is the chaitya-guru. That is my thought on that. And the chaitya-guru is Dandavat Ramananda Prabhu. The chaitya-guru is actually something spiritual and inherent within us, right? Srila Sridhar Maharaj describes it as the guru within, right? That there's the Mahant Guru and there's the Guru without, right? Our instructing Guru, our Diksha Guru, our Shiksha Guru, all of these types of Gurus. That is called the Mahant Guru sometimes. And then there's the Chaitya Guru, means the Guru within, right? And so that is actually something that is a part of our intrinsic being. It is an aspect of our soul being. And and but of course, right, depending on our degree of evolution, that Chaitya Guru may be somewhat obscured by a mundane lens. So it may take a more simplistic expression within the realm of morality, right? And simple conceptions of good and bad, right? But then on a higher level, right, that will take us within the spiritual realm, right? Will guide us in our spiritual search. That would be my thoughts about conscience. And it's, it is I will just mention, it is a little confusing because Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, if you look in his publications, and I expect he did this just to keep things more simple, not to overcomplicate things for a group who are learning about this all for the first time. So Srila Swami Maharaj, he actually defines Chaitya Guru as Paramatma, right? No. Paramatma, who is an aspect of the Lord himself, right? So if you look in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where these terms are discussed, Chaitya Guru, Mahant Guru, then Swami Maharaj defines it like that, the Chaitya Guru is Paramatma. But actually, if you look in the explanations of Srila Sridhar Maharaj and also the commentaries of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they're very clear that this Chaitya Guru is completely distinct from Paramatma, and the Chaitya Guru is actually in the Guru within, right? It is something very distinct. And of course, again, as I said, right, the voice of the Chaitya Guru will how loud that voice is, rather, it will be different according to our degree of awakenment, right? And that's why we can't completely depend upon our own chaitya-guru, because, as you're also bringing up in your question, right? We don't know sometimes where that voice is coming from. There's the mental plane, there's the intellectual plane. So those planes do exist. And at times we may be actually connecting more with those levels. But there is this deeper level within us of spiritual conscience, the chaitya-guru. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj also speaks clearly about that. And, in one place he says something very encouraging, that if we, there may be certain points in our spiritual journey where we feel some self-doubt, right? But that we can all, because ideally we are searching for guidance, right, from Guru and Vaishnava. That's ideal, right? The sincere practitioner always wants to have that guidance from a living Vaishnava. But there may be times in our life for different reasons that we don't have that possibility, right? And so then what do we do in those circumstances? And so Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he made this very encouraging expression saying, that your own inner spiritual conscience brought you here, right? Otherwise, how did you come to Krishna consciousness? So obviously you have some sense, you have some feeling for the truth. And so when all else fails, he was more or less saying, like, you can look to your own intuition, your own feeling, your own inner sense of direction. There's obviously, we are fallible, imperfect beings, we make mistakes, but there's obviously something within us that is very right? There's obviously something within us that can recognize, what is what. Otherwise, how did we come here in the first place, right? So it is that chaitya-guru within us. There is that spiritual voice within us, sense of conscience that can guide us, right? So that would be my feeling in regards to that question about what is the conscience. That, and it's actually something quite, esoteric, this point about the chaitya-guru, because the chaitya-guru, because remember, guru is ultimately a medium, right? And so that chaitya-guru can also appear in connection with different personalities, right? Like I heard in one talk, I believe it was Srila Govinda Maharaj, but it might have been Srila Sridhar Maharaj, where he was saying, pray to Nityananda Prabhu for guidance, and he will inspire you as the chaitya-guru within, right? So it can also happen like that the Lord or great Vaishnava may come appear within your heart, instruct you in the heart through the agency of the chaitya-guru. And that is actually something very comforting, isn't it? It is very encouraging. That inner connection is always there. So those are my thoughts on the chaitya-guru. I don't know, Tungarasa, if you want to make any comment on that, or maybe you're working now. And welcome everyone who's joined. We have Kirtida saying some. Oh, I'm glad, Kirtida. And you're saying some of it, wisdom inside. Some of it is something else. I'm speaking of the chaitya-guru. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that concept, but I expect you are. Samvid is something a little different. Um, Now we're going into another field here. Samvid is, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he gives this explanation, right? That when it comes to the divine substance, there are these three aspects, right? Samvid, Sandini, and then Hladini, right? And this also correlates with Sat Chit and Ananda, right? And Sat Chit Ananda. Okay, Tungarasa, I'm glad that that was helpful. If you want to add any further thoughts or doubts or anything, please do not hesitate. These are just my thoughts on that question. We've all heard something from our gurus and the scripture, and we are sharing that and inspiring one another and enlightening one another with that. That's what this space is for. So Samvit Sandini Hladini, Kirtida's opened up a new avenue here. Thinking, feeling, willing, right? There's actually a section in Subjective Evolution of Consciousness where Srila Sridhar Maharaj is talking about these points. Another very esoteric subject matter. So, right, there's the material energy, right? Jada Shakti. There's the spiritual energy, Chit Shakti. There's the marginal energy, Tatastha Shakti. And so we are of the Tatastha Shakti, right? The marginal potency, which means we are of a smaller, we are very small by nature, and we have the capacity to adapt to either the higher spiritual energy or the lower material energy. We are intrinsically of that higher spiritual nature, but we have this capacity to adapt to the lower energy, right? So marginal referred to, that's what tatasta means on the bank, on the margin. We can go either way, right? So then, but then this is kind of a simplistic way of describing it because actually there is a categorical difference between our spiritual nature and what is also referred to as the Swarup Shakti or Chit Shakti, the Lord's internal spiritual energy. And that has three aspects to it, right? And these also correlate with Sat, Chit, and Ananda, which is also the nature of the soul, right? Sat, eternity, Chit, consciousness, and Ananda, joy, right? And so then you could say in a more potent and concentrated form, these three things have their expression within the Swarup Shakti, the intrinsic, eternal, spiritual energy, right? And so those are, and so then they are called, as Kirtida has brought up, Samvit, which pretty much correlates with Chit, the consciousness, thinking, or wisdom, as you're saying here, spiritual knowledge aspect, right? So that is Samvit. And that is said to be represented, embodied by Krishna, right? Then there is Sandini, right, which correlates with the Sat potency, the energy of eternity, truth, right? Also, if we look at that framework of thinking, willing, and feeling, right, that willing energy, right, existence energy, that is represented by Baladev, right? And so that is why it is sometimes said that Baladev or Nityananda is the the manager of our ego. Because he that whole energy of like existing, willing, this type of power, right? Baladev, Bal means power. That's all Baladev, Nityananda's department, right? So the ego is also part of that, right? The sense of identity and our very existence, right? So, so Samvit, the thinking, consciousness, awareness, intelligence, knowledge aspect represented by Krishna, and then Sandini, the willing energy, the strength energy, the existence energy, the eternity energy that is represented by Baladev, and then Hladini, right? Hladini, that is Hladini, the energy of feeling, right? The feeling, loving, joy, right? Aspect. That is that Hladini is also correlating with Ananda, joy, right? So, and then, so that Hladini, who is that? Of course, that is Radharani, right? That is Srimati Radharani. So, this is the ontological, these are the ontological positions of Radha, Krishna, and Baladev. So, going into very fine topics. So that's like in the original spiritual sphere, right? These three aspects, and then they are coming and expressed in different ways. And but I suppose you could say the chaitya-guru may be connected with that, some bit spiritual knowledge, you could say, like that. But I haven't heard that exactly explained, but that sounds logical to me. There's some connection there. But I don't think it's limited. The chaitya-guru could also be connected with one of the other energies too. But I don't think I should say any more on that. Well, I hope that was somewhat helpful, Kirtida. If you want to make any other comment on that, please share. Otherwise, we also had another question, and this was from several weeks ago from Shreyash, asking about the relationship between Govardhan and Nabadwip and the presence of Gupta Govardhan. And welcome, we had several others join: Jagannath Vallabha Prabhu, Jagannath Priya Prabhu, too, Jagannath Ananda Krishna Prabhu is also with us, and Anjil. Welcome everyone, happy to have you here. So then this other question from Shreyash about Govardhan and Navadvip. Yeah, we're going quite deep today. So relationship between Govardhan, Navadvip, and then Gupta Govardhan. Well, we can think of it like this, that when it comes to the highest sphere, the absolute has three different moods, right? And these are Aishwarya, which means this mood of majesty, power, opulence, right? This reverential approach. Aishwarya is actually derived from the word Ishvara, I'm pretty sure. Okay, Kirtida, I'm glad. And so Ishvara, right, is a name for the Lord, right, who is the controller, master, right? So Aishwarya, I believe, is derived from that. So means this aspect of the Lord that is very godlike, right? That is very Lord-like, So that refers to generally Lord Narayan, Lord Vishnu, And I'm just going to turn on another light here. It's getting a little dark. It correlates with generally how we think of God in the world, right? As this great almighty being, right? And where God is far from us. And so in Christianity, right, and general conceptions of God in the world, this more or less correlates with this mood of Aishwarya, right? We are God's servants. He is our great master, Almighty Father, and all these things. So that is one aspect, right? And then there is Madhurya, right? Madhurya is referring to sweetness, right? So it means this very sweet, close conception of who God is, right? Where we can have a close approach with God. And that is Krishna, right? In the form of Krishna, we can have that. We can experience that aspect of the Lord, this more intimate, close aspect. Then there is the third aspect that is Audarya. And Audarya means this spirit of generosity, right? This mood of distribution, right? And this is what we find in Gora Lila and the Lila of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his mood. It is characterized by this mood of giving, distribution, magnanimity, and so on. And but then and from one perspective, it is said, right, these three aspects of the Lord, they are all equal, right? They are all ontologically of the same category, right? However, in the mood of Aishwarya, right, in that mood of majesty, reverence with the Lord, and that type of relationship, there's some suppression, right? Because the relationship cannot be free, right? Because there's this emphasis on the Lord, on the Lord's divinity, right? Then there's necessarily some distance that the Lord is so great and almighty, as our Gurudev used to say, Allah is so great, but I cannot play football with Allah. I want to play football with my Lord. So there's some deficiency, you can say, in the rasa, in the degree of sweetness and intimacy that is available. And so for that reason, it is stated in scripture, that Vishnu and Krishna, they are equal status. However, when it comes to rasa, then Krishna's higher, right? So from the perspective of rasa, then we say Krishna Lila and then also Gora Lila, they are of a higher nature because the rasa is there, the full spectrum of rasa, the full spectrum of relationships and feeling and sweetness is all available, right? In their divine abode and in their divine pastimes. So that brings us to these two aspects now, right? Leaving behind the Aishwarya aspect, the aspect of Madhurya, this sweetness, this intense sweetness, where one can exchange intense, loving intimacy with the Lord and experience the Lord's sweetness to the maximum degree, right? That's Madhurya. And then there's Audarya, right? Audarya is Mahaprabhu's Lila, Gora Lila, where that same sweetness is there, but it's wearing like a bit of a different dress, right? And there's this mood of distribution, of sharing that sweetness, where not that the sweetness is confined to one, exclusive group, but there's like this program, a canvassing program going on, that we want to share this with everyone, right? And there's one beautiful verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, our Gurudev Srila Govinda Maharaj liked very much. And in fact, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, there's a recording of Srila Sridhar Maharaj talking about this, and he And he says, Govinda Maharaj likes one verse very much, so Srila Sridhar Maharaj also appreciated that. And that verse is describing this difference between these two Leelas. Krishna Leela Mrita Sar Tar Shata Shata Dar Dash Dike Vahe Jaha Hoite Se Chaitanya Leela Hoy Sarovar Akoy Mano Hamsa Chada Hatahate. Beautiful verse from Kaviraj Goswami. And it's an invitation to the readers of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he's saying that Krishna Leela is the essence of all sweetness. It is the sweetness of the sweetness. It is la crème de la crème. It is the condensed sweetness of all sweetness. This is Krishna Leela. But what is the nature of Gaura Leela, Chaitanya Leela? That sweetness it's being poured out in all directions, like streams, like hundreds of streams coming from a lake, right? So it says in all 10 directions, shata shata dar. There are these hundreds of streams pouring out, distributing that sweetness, right? So Gaura Lila and Krishna Lila, they are equal when it comes to rasa, when it comes to this sweetness and love and relationships, right? They are the same quality of rasa is there, but the mood is different, right? So there's some difference in style, right? And so that brings us to Navadvip and Vrindavan and Govardhan, right? Because then as their leelas are same but different, so also when it comes to their divine abodes, right? There is this aspect of them being one and the same, but then different. Achincha Beda Bed, right? This principle pervades the Gaudiya Vaishnava theology, right? That simultaneously one and distinct, right? And so from that perspective, it is said, right, that Navadvip and Vrindavan, they are non-different. And so Gupta Govardhan, right? And so then this also becomes more precise, because then it is also described by our gurus that every part of Vrindavan, every part of Govardhan, the Mathura Mandal, that area of Krishna's divine pastimes, they have a corresponding part, right, in Gaura Lila, in Navadvip, right? So every part of Mathura Mandal, that area of Krishna's pastimes, has its corresponding place in Navadvip, right, the place of Mahaprabhu's pastimes. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he discusses this. Navadvip Mahatmya, this is discussed, and no doubt by other Gaudiya authors also. And so it was also asked specifically about Gupta Govardhan, right? Because this is the area that Srila Sridhar Maharaj chose to establish his mat. And so that area is where Srila Sridhar Maharaj chose to establish his mission. It is said to be corresponding specifically with Govardhan, right? Govardhan is one area within the whole of the Mathura Mandal, the whole area of Krishna's birth and pastimes, right? There's Vrindavan, there's Govardhan, there's Varshana, there's Nandagram, and so many other villages, right? So Govardhan is one particular area within the broader Mathura Mandala region. And within Navadvip, so then if we go to the place of Mahaprabhu's pastimes, this is Navadvip. Navadvip, what does that mean, right? It means 9 islands. And so there are these 9 islands, and they are all, and there's also different areas within those 9 islands, going in more specific. And so then each of them is corresponding with the areas in the Mathura Mandal. And so where our mat is situated, that is the island of Koladweep, right? And there are many points of significance actually about this Koladweep. Another interesting point, and specifically in the area where the mat was established within Koladweep, that is, as I think everyone here knows, that is known as Aparad Banjan Pat, right? It means the place where all offenses are forgiven, right? Because it was a place where Mahaprabhu forgave the worst criminals, it is said, the worst criminals. He had delivered Jagai and Madai, right? Jagai and Madai, that is also another pastime that is celebrated. But this area of Aparad Banjam Pat, the persons that Mahaprabhu delivered here, it is said they were much worse than Jagai and Madai. Why? Because Jagai and Madai, they were not such terrible people. They were sinful persons, right? But they had not committed Vaishnava aparat, right? But there were a few persons. There was Gopal Chapal and I think one or two others. They had actually committed serious Vaishnava aparat, right? There was one who defended, right, Srivas Thakur, and there were others. So then that is much more serious, right? Ordinary sinful activity, that is not considered very serious from the Vaishnava perspective. But to commit offenses to the Vaishnavas, that is very serious. That is something that can harm the soul, right? And of course, Mahaprabhu had first made those persons apologize to the Vaishnavas they had offended first. But then after that, then he also gave his mercy to them personally. And so that Aparad Banjampat, that is why it is described as the place where all offenses are forgiven, because it is there that Mahaprabhu showed the greatest amount of mercy, where the most fallen persons, the most offensive persons, they were forgiven there. And so that is why that area, it's abounding in this mercy, right? Because Mahaprabhu expressed the greatest degree of mercy there. So that then it became known as Aparad Banjampat. So that is another interesting point of significance. But then within the broader Koladweep island, of course, now it's not exactly appearing as a distinct island, but it may have at one point. It is the spiritual vision of Navadvip, right? It is envisioned as a lotus flower, with the heart, the whorl of the lotus flower being Mayapur, the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this Koladweep, it is said to be corresponding with Govardhan, right? And so it is, so Koladweep, it is known as Gupta Govardhan. Gupta means hidden, right? So Gupta Govardhan, hidden Govardhan, means Govardhan as it is appearing within Mahaprabhu's Leela in Koladweep. And this is, this is also of great significance, right? Because Govardhan has been described as the place of our highest ideal, right? The place of our aspiration. This has been described by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and our Gurudev Srila Govinda Maharaj also spoke about this. It is the big, and this is coming from Rupa Goswami, right, in his Upadeshamrita, in the ninth verse, right? Vaikunta janito varamadupodi tatrapida sotsava. This verse, very key verse in the 11 verses of Upadeshamrita. This verse is describing the ontology of the spiritual sky, right? That there is, and he identifies, Srila Rupa Goswami identifies Radha Kund as the highest place. That is as Srila Sridhar Maharaj says, Srimati Radharani in liquid form, in her extension in water, in the form of water, right? As Govardhan is Krishna's extension in the form of a mountain, right? So Radha Kund is an extension of Srimati Radharani. And so Rupa Goswami describes that as the highest place in the spiritual sky. And then he identifies Govardhan as just one level before that, right? That, in that verse, he's saying, right, above Vaikunta is Mathura, because in Mathura, there is the Lord's Janma Leela takes place, his birth pastime. So there's more rasa there. The development of rasa is greater because there's the pastimes of birth and there's the relationship, right, of mother and son and all these things. The relationship is more intensified because of the birth pastime, right? Then higher than Mathura, there's Vrindavan, because the Rasa Leela, this special amorous dance, took place between Krishna and the Braja Gopis. And then higher than Vrindavan is Govardhan, because more exclusive, intimate pastimes took place there. And highest of all is Radha Kund. And so Rupa Goswami has identified this, right, in his Upadeshamrita, Sri Upadeshamrita. And so this was the thinking of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that, that Radha Kund is the highest place, right? And we can also add that because of that, there are many who run to reside there or to bathe in those waters, right? Because Rupa Goswami also mentions that one who bathes in those waters will attain the rarest type of divine love, right? So there are many who jump on that, right? Oh, we must go and bathe in those waters. We must live there. It is the highest place. But the approach of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is different. His thinking is, well, if that is the highest place, then we cannot go there. That we will not have the audacity, right? But we will stay one step below. So his feeling was that our gurus will go there. Our gurus will stay there, and we will stay at some safe distance in Govardhan. Another point about Govardhan is that it is a place of, again, a place of great magnanimity. It is a place of great generosity, quite unique, actually, because if we compare like how generally, the worship of Radha and Krishna is carried out, and then we can also look at, how the worship of Lord Narayan is carried out. There's particular standards, right? But when it comes to the worship of Sri Govardhan, it is very simple. It is very magnanimous, very generous. The standard is very minimal and simple, right? It is a heart-based worship, right? And so, right, Mahaprabhu personally gave Govardhan Shila to Raghunath Das Goswami and told him, offer water and tulasi every day, bas. That is all. Very simple worship. That is the place where Lord Krishna showed the greatest protection and love and care over his devotees, protecting them from the wrath of Lord Indra. So it is a unique and special mood that is found, that Krishna has expressed in his Govardhan mood. So this was the vision of Saraswati Thakur, right? We will stay one step below in Govardhan, the safety of Govardhan. And he says, and we will go in the day to assist our gurus at Radha Kund. And then when we finish our service at the end of the day, we will retreat, go back to our safe place in Govardhan. It is a very beautiful thing, very showing such depth of humility and caution, right? In the approach towards the ultimate. divine substance. And and so this was all part of Srila Sridhar Maharaj's vision, right? When he came to establish the mats, and he brought some Govardhan Shilas with him, right? From uh from Govardhan, right? He spent the month of Kartik in Govardhan. And I'm just thinking, Ananda Krishna found a very rare old photograph recently. Um, it was a very old picture of the deities, and I think there were two Govardhan Shilas there, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and so he brought these Govardhan Shilas with him, um, and two Gupta Govardhan, hidden Govardhan in Navadvip, Aparad Banjam Pat, the place of mercy, the place of the highest mercy within the plane of the highest mercy. And Navadvip is already a place of great mercy. So like it's really quite extraordinary if you think about it. What Srila Sridhar Maharaj's divine vision was, within Navadvip, which is already the place of great mercy, then to Koladvip representing Govardhan, Gupta Govardhan, which is also a place of great mercy. And then specifically Aparad Banjam Pat, right? So on these three levels, intense, intense divine mercy. Well, we don't have Shreyash with us today, so I don't know if I've exactly answered his question. But we saw, our Gurudev, he expressed this aspiration himself, that he wanted to stay in Govardhan. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur also in his last days, it was his desire. But anyway, don't know. Would anyone else like to add anything or bring up another topic for today? And our Gurudev, he, as many of you have seen, I see you've raised your hand, Jagannath. I'll be with you in just a minute. Many of you have seen in our mat in Navadvip, right? Our Gurudev, he had this beautiful diorama inscribed at the entrance of our mat, right? Just in front of the temple, depicting the Govardhan Leela, right? And it's very, very beautiful. I think you've all seen a picture, right? It's showing the Govardhan Leela, and then the sweet Govardhan Leela, right? Krishna holding the Govardhan hill with the pinky of his left hand. And you see all the Brajabasis around him, and they're all helping in their various ways, holding up with their sticks, and they feel they're helping him. But then underneath that, our Gurudev also put a depiction of Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan party. Right. And so it's actually a beautiful expression of what is Gupta Govardhan, right? That in the mood of generosity, right? And in the mood of distribution, in the expression of kirtan, of Sankirtan, right? That sweet mood of Govardhan, right, is being expressed, is coming out. It's very perfect. Jagannath Vallabha Prabhu, Dandavat. Did you raise your hand, Prabhu? Oh, he's just dropped out. Okay, never mind. Gangalila saying strong memories. Yes, you were there. You were there.
And especially, I remember quite a moment where I had a real aha moment with what you were just sharing.
Mm,
Um, Standing in Navadvip at the entrance of the temple with Dula Krishna,
mm,
and he pointing that out to me, and for some reason I didn't see that kirtan party. There was this second layer underneath that what I've seen before, the Leela of
mm,
Govardhan, but this whole Gupta Govardhan. And you saw people just playing mridanga and singing and dancing basically. It was such a bringing Mahaprabhu closer to my understanding. It was a really good one. I
mm.
have a very strong memory of it. I would have a question unless there's because there was somebody before me.
Yeah, but looks like he had to drop out. So please go ahead.
Yeah, so and it's not related to any of that, but I really like the first question actually, the conscience and
Mm,
what kind of place that takes within. And here I have another one which is very common in a way, is how much is recommended to energy to put into health and mental emotional upkeep. We all have to, like maybe somebody needs to see a therapist, somebody needs to have a surgery. And I have been near people who become completely consumed by it, and I clearly understand that that's not a spiritual thing basically. But yeah, is there I mean, that's maybe not a clear answer, but I was wondering what your take on it is, because it's in a way it is focusing on material stuff, but then the body is my material stuff, and if I don't have it, I can't continue my Krishna consciousness for now. Is that making sense, that
Yes,
question?
it makes total sense. Yeah. Um, and I mean
Okay.
all of these things, they are we can think of them as the the instruments, that we have at present. And we cannot pretend that we are not embodied beings, right? Oh, Jagannath, all but happy that you're back. If it's easier, if your connection isn't good, you could type in the chat what it is that you wanted to say. Um, and if we don't get to today, we can definitely get to it next time. Um, um, we're not Shukadev Goswami. Shukadev Goswami, he really had zero conception of the body, and because of that, he walked naked. And we hear that description, right? How when his father Vyasadeva was running after him, there are those young women bathing naked, and it said when Shukadev went past them, they didn't blink, because they could see he had zero conception of male, female, all these things. But then when Vyasadeva came by, his father, and he's also a great sage, like it's not like he's just some ordinary Joe. He's Veda Vyas, he's Krishna Dvaipayan Veda Vyas. But they could see he has some connection with material vision. He distinguishes between male, female, and all these things. He's had a son, he's had a child, and um, they could feel that, and they covered up. They were uncomfortable, right? So, we're not Shukadev Goswami, and we don't have to be either. And we have bodies, we have minds, we have emotions, um, and we know that we are more than that, right? We know that we are actually Atman, we are soul. But right now, this is what we have. We can't ignore it, right? We have to take care of it, and as far as possible, use it as a tool to help us on our spiritual path, right? And so, as you said, it's not a straightforward question, it's not a straightforward answer. It is highly individual. And it's also something that will change as we make our own evolution, right? But in a simple in a simple way, I would say that we have to manage ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves, and we have to, and whether that's emotionally or physically or mentally, we have to take care of these things. We if and I know our Gurudev, he supported that. If someone needed some mental care, to see a therapist for that. I know of at least one specific case where Gurudev recommended that. We are where we are, and we have to accept that. And and sometimes we may also have desires that we're not able to let go of, and that's also okay. This is actually something that's very beautiful in Vaishnavism, that we're not being pushed, we're not being forced to artificially give up certain attachments, right? But rather to recognize them for what they are, and then is and work with them, and as far as possible dovetail them. you know in the end of in the last section of Brahma Samhita, this is actually discussed. And the case of Lord Brahma is actually very interesting and helpful for us, because Lord Brahma, he is actually a great devotee. He's the first created being. He's a pretty amazing guy. Pretty amazing dude, Lord Brahma. And he's actually a great devotee. He has love for the Lord, but he's also living within the relativity of this material atmosphere. He has his own desires, right? And especially the energy of Rajagun, it is mentioned, right? And that's actually required for creation, right? That energy of passion. So this is mentioned in these last verses of Brahma Samhita, right? That Lord Brahma, he is a devotee of Krishna. He wants to serve Krishna and develop his devotion for Krishna, but he also has these material desires, and right. So in the end of Brahma Samhita, this is discussed, right? That try to to make this an offering. That yes, you have this duty, and you also have this desire. You don't have to reject that. You carry that out, but try to do it in such a way that there's a connection, with myself. Try to make that an offering. And in this way, there's a gradual evolution of consciousness, right, that can take place. So, like, for example, when it comes to our bodies, right, we have some attachment to our bodies. Then we can think, well, let me try to make my body look nice, so I'm nicely representing the devotees of Krishna, right? We can try to like make some connection there, right? Maybe a part of it is just that we want to look nice, but we're making a connection. No, let me try and connect that with the service of the Lord and his devotees. Let me think that I'm representing Mahaprabhu's movement, that I'm connected with this mission and these gurus. And when people see me on the street, I want them to have a good impression of who we are. So I'm going to connect it with that. Maybe it actually, my intention is not fully pure. Maybe it's a little mixed, but that's okay. I'm whatever it is, I'm offering it to Krishna, right? And there will be some purification that takes place in the course of all of that. This is really the principle of Krishna consciousness, right? That whatever we have, it's like whatever we have, we're throwing it in that fire, right? Like there have been some devotees who have been very honest with me. I want to make money. Like they tell me that I want to be rich. Like I'm not going to pretend that I want to be a poor bum who lives in a little tiny hut. Like I'm not going to pretend that. And I'm happy to hear these wonderful stories of the six Goswamis who live under trees, but I'm not there. I want to make money and I want to live comfortably. There are devotees who've honestly told me that, and I appreciate that. That's real and that's honest. Because if we try and pretend we're something we're not, how are we going to progress from that point, right? So then what's the advice of the scripture? Okay, that's great. You want to make money, no problem. Yes, that is a material desire, but try and connect that with Krishna. Use that wealth. Use that. Of course, you're going to use a portion of that for your own life and your own comfort and whatever, but use a portion of that for Krishna's service, right? And because you're in that movement of offering, because you're offering yourself and your desires into that purifying sacrificial fire, right? Then there's purification that will take place, right? Because of that. So this is like the broad advice of our gurus and the Shastra. Whatever you are and wherever you are, it's okay. But keep, try to make everything an offering, try to keep it connected in some way. Continue with your Shava and Kirtan, Sadhu Sangha, all these things, right? And it's a gradual process. And then if I go back to perhaps more specifically what you're asking, you can also think of it as like oiling the machine, that our bodies are like these vehicles, they're cars that carry us from place to place. And our emotions are also like that, right? And our mental system's also like that. So we have to oil the machine. We have to take care of it. And so sometimes we have to do what we have to do, and that's fine, you know. If one is at a very high level of faith, then they don't require any of that because they're just aloof. They've transcended their body and everything connected with it. So they don't they don't need those things, right? Because they're just living on such a high platform of faith. Because it is said in the scriptures, right? You can get everything this just through chanting the holy name. And I believe that is true. If one is actually living on that level of faith, right? Just like we were also discussing about Aparad Banjam Pat, right? This place where all offenses are forgiven. It is said that if someone it is said in some writings of the Vaishnavas that if one stays for 3 nights there, they will be liberated from all sin or something like that. And our Gurudev said about that means if you can stay there for 3 nights with full faith, right? Everything depends on that. What is the depth of our faith? What type? Everything is consciousness, as Srila Maharaj would say. So yes, we can get everything through taking prasadam. We can get everything through chanting the holy name, right? But that deep type of faith also has to be there. And we don't have to pretend that we are there if we're not. There's no need for that. And so in the meantime, we are living in the consciousness of our body, our mind, and emotions, and we do need to take care of them. And if we take care of them, then we can focus more on what really matters, right? We can think of it like that, let me take care of my emotions, take care of my mental health, take care of my body, so that I can serve better, so that I can connect better where it really matters. And our Gurudev Srila Govinda Maharaj, she was very practical in this way, and I appreciate that very much. So those are my thoughts. I hope that was helpful in some way.
Yes, thank you very much. Makes me want to apply my manasa puja more, like just offering it. So just like a side question for what you just shared. So Guru Maharaj, there was a lot of coughing, a lot of health issues. He took care of that. Was he doing that? Or kind of beyond all that?
I mean, I mean, he did, I mean, Srila Sridhar Maharaj actually would have terribly debilitating headaches at times, and, there would be doctors called and ultimately Srila Govinda Maharaj became his doctor. I mean, yes, we've also seen in the examples of our gurus, they did take care of their health, I mean, not to an obsessive degree, right? As you mentioned, right? Sometimes you meet people like that who can become obsessive about it, not to an obsessive degree. Um, like for example, with diet, that like our Gurudev would accept medicine, and he was seeing doctors and so on. But like when it came to diet, he wouldn't really change his diet. To some degree, he would modify, but he liked to take prasadam, you know. That was something very important to him. And he didn't, he had diabetes, right, in those last years. And so his diet was restricted and his servitors would, adjust his diet. But it wasn't extreme. And and he always liked to take everything. And he really, emphasized the importance of prasadam. You know. I remember Trivikram Maharaj, he told me once, that he was on some type of special diet. We all do these special diets, right? Sometimes, and I definitely do. Um, and our Gurudev was asking him, so tell me about this diet, and kind of humoring him, like tell me about this diet. So Trivikram Maharaj is explaining to him what he's eating. And then our Gurudev said, okay, that is nice, and he said, but that is not Guru Maharaj's conception. And he said, Guru Maharaj's conception is we take prasad. We will take prasad. But our Gurudev, also mentioned at other times, that we must take what is good for our health, and he also said we shouldn't offer something that if we cannot honor that prasadam. He also said that. And I also felt with our Gurudev that like when it came to the way he would take medicine and stuff, I felt that it was largely honoring the wishes of his disciples and followers, like because our Gurudev, he was a master homeopath, he was a master herbalist. I've heard stories from the devotees, like he was like if he was going to pick his own treatment, it would be natural medicine. It would be the traditional medicine. But I mean, this may offend some devotees who might happen to hear this, but he was taking some horrible like allopathic medicine because that's what devotees were giving him. Like he wouldn't pick that for himself. I don't think he would pick that for himself. And he would be going to the standard hospitals and following conventional treatment. But I really see it as like a testament to his humility and the fact that he was detached. Like if he was actually going to choose his own treatment, I'm sure it would have been something very natural. But for him, that wasn't important. Like you won't hear our Gurudev giving a whole lecture about Ayurveda and all these things. Like he wanted to spread Krishna consciousness. He was focused on that. And it was like if his disciples want to give him this little pill or that little pill, okay. Like he was just like accepting that. Like it just hit me recently, like, because I've heard stories of like one devotee in Australia told me her mother had some severe abdominal issue, was in so much pain. Our Gurudev picked all these herbs that were growing around the temple, different herbs of different types. He made it into this poultice, um, and then gave it to her, and the daughter is the one who told me the story, like smeared it all over her mother, and she was completely cured. You know, it's like he was a master. You don't hear Gurudev ever talk of. I've rarely, in a few rare recordings, I've heard him mention like one or two herbs. You know, like Srila Sridhar Maharaj used to take Brahmi like every day. You know, you've probably heard that. And our Gurudev mentioned once how he like would go and pick this wild Brahmi and make a shock out of it for Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And it just hit me recently, like our Gurudev was actually a master herbalist. You hear stories of him prescribing homeopathic medicine, like just with instant results, you know. Especially there was a period like during the 90s when there weren't quite so many visitors coming. Our Gurudev would be personally treating the devotees, putting the pills in their mouth, you know. And then, you know, fast forward to his later years and he's taking all these like all this allopathic medication, you know, like that wouldn't have been his choice, like no way. But he's just like going along with it, you know, like his disciples only give this to him, the doctors are telling him okay, because he didn't want to make that what his mission was about, you know, like natural health, you know, like that's not what he's about. He's standing for Mahaprabhu's message, right? So it's like, okay, if you want to give me this horrible medicine, I mean, no offense, you know, to whoever did that. But it just hit me like, wow, like Gurudev was just surrendered, you know, he was just surrendered. And it's also like a loving exchange. Like, oh, my disciple affectionately wants to give me this medicine. I'm going to take it, you know, like, okay. That wouldn't have been his first choice. You know, when I heard Gurudev also like tell stories like how like someone like some Vaishnava he mentioned like went on this really strict diet, like went all out, changing their whole life. And then they died of some accident, you know. Like he would mention examples like this, you know. So yes, you know, like we see in the case of Srila Govinda Maharaj and Srila Sridhar Maharaj, they did take care of their health, you know, they did take different remedies, but they were far from focusing on that or obsessing about that. You know, it was to a reasonable degree, you know, to a reasonable degree. Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada also, right? We know you know, he had things that he did, you know, to take care of his health, you know. I recently saw one very nice quote where Srila Prabhupada was saying, like, I don't have much faith in medicine or doctors anymore, but I'm seeing that massage is very helpful. Like I'm finding that I'm practically seeing that massage is helping me very much, you know, and he would, I think every day he had disciples who would massage him. And we know he had different things he would take, you know, so it's about oiling the machine, right? But then also ultimately accepting, you know, I do my part, but I'm not going to obsess over it. It's ultimately in higher hands, right? And maybe I just have to go through some karma right now, right? Not to push too much, right? That we may do something to care for ourselves, but then if the response isn't coming, we let it be. Like we put that out there, but we don't push, right? I'm not going to sit and cry because I'm not in perfect health right now. Okay, I'm doing my bit. When it's time for me to be healthy again, it'll happen, right? I'm not going to make that my ride or die, right? My the hill to die on, whatever the expression is. So, but yeah, it's a tricky thing to navigate day by day, right? And overall, we're just trying to keep our main ideal, right? That we want to be lovers of God. We want to fall in love with the highest entity. And we're trying to go on with our daily practices, keeping our aspiration at heart, right? And whatever we have to do to keep that, then we'll do that. So those are my thoughts on that subject.
Well, that was wonderful to hear. Thank you so much.
And we did have a question from Jagannath, but we'll save it for next week. And he also seems like his connection isn't good. Okay, well, I guess we'll stop there for today. Thank you all for your good company. It's been lovely to be with you as always. And wish you a good day and night. And look forward to seeing you next time. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, all the assembled devotees ki Jai, and sincere seekers ki Jai. Vanchakalpatarubhyas cha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. That.